Everybody. Thought I'd give an update on the Land Cruiser project that I'm working on. Haven't posted or haven't recorded a video for a while, so just thought it'd be a good idea to give you an update and kind of talk about what's been happening, how things have been going. So it's been kind of a busy last few weeks. Wound up just kind of working on school stuff for quite a bit through the last few weeks, and then been trying to get out here and work on things just like on weekends and a little bit at night. It's kind of late tonight actually right now. Just got done mowing and taking care of some yard work and getting caught up on some things through the middle of the week here. So but things have been progressing. That's been really good. I wound up going and finding this guy that had some parts, some FJ40 parts. I needed some sides that I could use to start building out the hard top, and I needed some doors, an extra set of doors. And it turned out this guy had like the top fiberglass cap, and he had some ambulance doors for the back, had the other doors, and they wound up being the previous owner that he bought it from had coated them in Herculiner, so they were pretty grody. You couldn't really tell what was underneath, what kind of condition things were in. But we worked out a deal, and I wound up getting those parts from him, and those are really what have allowed me to continue on with the project and start to make some progress. It looks like there's something actually there instead of just a shell or a tub with a frame that's been stretched. So a lot of progress has been made. There's still a ton of rust in this. I'm gonna have to work a lot on even on the sides that I got from him. They were pretty rusty and crusty in the back corners, which is pretty typical for these. So I've still got a lot to do, but this has turned out to be pretty good in terms of making some progress. So I'll just kind of show you where we're at. All right, so I think last time I made a video, I was still kind of working on the middle section of how I was gonna do that, and so it turns out I've been able to like underneath it. This isn't just tacked. This isn't even tacked in yet, but and kind of show how I did this. So I'll lift this up. So I put in some rails underneath of there as supports, and so this is going to be pretty stable, or very stable. I had to weld in a new piece along this back section. It was all rusted out underneath, so I had to completely cut that out and re-weld that. And again, it's just tacked in. Well, it's actually more than tacked, but I've welded a good portion of that in. And then I put some supports in underneath, some flat, well, actually some angle underneath of here that I tacked in to kind of stiffen all this front floor up, and then just bridge across. So the idea will be that I'll be able to put probably a bench seat in this region across here, and then I can even do a fold and tumble if I can find some sort of frame, or I might have to build something from scratch for that. But I can do a fold and tumble rear seat, bench seat across the back. So that's going to work out really nice, I think. And I think a lot of the conversions I see, a lot of people have the raised seats. Mine has the toolbox instead, and then the gas tank sat down in that region. So a lot of people, when they build these, to have a footwell in here for the bench, for the passengers in the bench seat in the rear, they have to drop this down in. So I didn't really have to do that. I wanted to make sure I had clearance for transmission and drive shaft and stuff coming through and transfer case. So we'll figure that out when the time comes, but I think I've got enough clearance there. I might have to do a little tunnel. We'll see how that goes. And I still need to do some sort of reinforcement, like pressing. So do some pressing on this panel. That's why I haven't welded it in yet. I want to do some sort of reinforcement stamping on the panel to be able to give it even more strength. And then once it's welded, it'll be really strong. So I've left the fender wells kind of cut out for now. There was some rust in those areas, here and there. I'm trying to figure out, because I have seen where some people have needed a little clearance for bench seat to get that lower. I don't know if I'm going to do that though, because it looks like with my wheelbase, as I'm getting like articulation or whatever, I don't want that hindering my travel. So we'll have to figure that part out. I did go ahead and put the doors that I'd gotten from the person and that's local here, and I put those on just kind of temporarily, and those are great. Those are going to work out really well. He even had the top header pieces. You can see these still have the Herculiner on them. So he had those. So those will be great, because I'll use those as header bars across where the other doors go in. And then I use my header bars off my other hard top just to kind of mock this up. And then I've built this. This is actually going to be my pillar in here, and then I'm going to box all this in. So right now this is just kind of propped up. I did come in and slice these. So this is just two real thick wall tube. I think this needs to be really strong in the pillar, as I want this to be super strong, since it's fairly narrow in here. So this is going to all get boxed in. I'll have a little bit of sculpting to do here to kind of match the curvature of this section. So that's what this line is kind of representing, is that where the door kind of hits. I've still got to do some alignment. You can see I've got a big gap there, because I don't actually have this like gap set or anything. Obviously, it's too early for that. But and then I've got to figure out exactly. This is just mocked up to kind of see placement for hinges. This is the same plate as this. It's usually welded into the cowl or tacked into the cowl. So I took that out of an extra cowl that I had, and then that'll form our hinge plates for the rear doors. And should work out really nice. And then of course I'm going to have to reconstruct all this down in here, but I want to wait because I'm going to have to create these kind of sculpted pieces that end up, and I'm obviously going to do a lot of repair here too where it's rusted out, but I've got to recreate essentially this kind of form down in there to be able to put doors in here. And then these doors are going to wind up being narrower. So those doors are going to be narrower anyway. I think they look better if they're not the same size. A lot of people I see use them just as is, same standard width. But I think narrowing them and then also playing with the wheel well or the shape that mimics the wheel well is really important. Plus those corners are pretty crunchy on these. So I should be able to resculpt those doors, but I will have to split, take a section out, and then re-weld, and then reconstruct, the frames. These were old doors I had from my previous build, and of course I'm missing the window frame section, but it's going to have to get built anyway to kind of match. I think the only thing I would have been able to keep was probably in here, So we'll see how that turns out. If I could find another set of doors, would I use those? Yeah, probably. Just so I don't have to deal with reconstructing this. I can just split it in the middle, section it, put it back together. So I've got I got those doors cleaned up, fairly decent. This one actually was in pretty good shape. Doesn't have most of these wind up having a ton of rust down in there, but it's worked out pretty well. And then, like I said, I'll build all this up from scratch and really make that strong. Tie this together with the header bar across the top, and then also tie in here with the standard one. So that's where I'm setting there. As far as the back, this was kind of a big project. So he had given me these ambulance doors, right, which are just like my stock ones. Now, obviously, you might say, well, why didn't you use the ones he gave you? I had already tacked these in to kind of to have placement on these, and I thought, the ones he had were just as bad as mine down in here anyway, and I knew I was going to have to do work to these, and I did it to my other doors on my other restoration that I'd done. So I'm like, I know I can manage that. So what I wound up doing is I took his ambulance doors and I cut this window out on both of the doors that he had. And it turns out that if you take this window and you flip it, it winds up being the same height as these windows. So basically, I'm cutting this, and then I'm turning it sideways, and then I'm cutting a section out of this, and then bringing these two halves together vertically to create, this. So that's what this window, I've just got seal. I mean, this is a seal, the old seals that came out of the other ambulance doors. But this becomes, the rear window. And when I started looking at this, I was like, I put in sheet here, just solid sheet. It just didn't look right. It felt like there was too much space. I think part of the fact that these Land Cruisers kind of have an iconic look that you're used to seeing, and it just didn't quite match. And so I was like, this gap needs to be pretty narrow between the rear window and the closest window to it. And so I was like, it just didn't look right. So that's why I felt like I really needed to make these. Granted, they're small. I think I only wind up with like 6.5 inches in terms of the window. This is 9 inches across here of the section I had to put in to kind of bridge the gap between the two sections. But it was real easy. There's a seam on the top where this section and this section fit together. I just cut straight down that. I did do a little jog over, just because there was still a little curvature in this region. I know this looks real messy right now, but I needed to get this kind of tacked in and know where it was going to be, what size it was going to be, and then I'll come back and I'll repair. And I knew I was going to have to repair, down in here anyway, and then obviously all the way around. So and then obviously, up in here. So I was like, okay, no big deal. I should be able to make it work, So when the guy had taken the top off of the other FJ, he wound up splitting this header bar here. This is a hollow tube construction press steel section that gets put in. Luckily, my first FJ had been rolled, and so they had gotten a lot of replacement parts. So I happen to have one of these already. So that worked out pretty well that I already had that. And then I just came back over and I wound up putting in the matching window on this side, got my measurements like spot on. And of course, when I came in to take off all the Herculiner, I wound up discovering, this is probably an antenna mount at some point. So this side looks rough, probably in the light that we're in. I just haven't sanded this like I have the other pieces. This is just wire brushed only to get the Herculiner off. And then, like I said, this is going to have to all be repaired in here like it is on the other side, except this side's the worst side. I'll have to repair up there in the corner. So tacked in my panels on my sides a long time ago, got those tacked in, and those are pretty decent. I'll have some work to do there probably. And then again, I got the other door that he had, got it stripped down. So obviously I'm missing a hinge there. That's why we got a lot of sag, a big gap there. Now the next thing was basically, how do I piece together a roof? On these there's a rail. You can see this rail. This is a steel rail, drip rail or rain gutter all the way around, and this bolts to the top because all this stuff, I love it because it's like a giant erector set. And so there are bolts that hold all this in, and then the fiberglass shell is aluminum riveted, not pop riveted, but like aluminum riveted to the steel channel. And these steel rain gutters, they always rust out because the seal winds up that there's caulk that they caulk in, or a seam sealer that they put in around the rivets, and inevitably over time the sealant breaks down with probably with UV, and you start getting water and it washes under, and then there's a kind of a lip on the inside here, right up underneath here, so you wind up getting water just sitting there, and so it rusts them out horribly. My top that I had, because I had this is two tops obviously, right? So I had to take his top fiberglass shell, and then I had to take my top that I had And so this rail's all in good shape on mine. I had already redone this previously. And so I ground all the rivets, popped the rivets out, and basically, went from the front as far back as I could. And then on this section, I knew I was going to slice the rain gutter at this 9 inches that I added in. So I went ahead and sliced it there on both sides, screwed this in, so that would establish my end point for the top. And then I came up, I knew this was going to establish this part. I screwed this in. You can see, bolts right there and there, and that secures that rail. And then I can basically set the two tops on there, and I cut the rear one first, and I just tried to measure up as far as I could, because basically there's a breaking point, right about here where the roof angles in. So the fiberglass kind of angles at this point, and I wanted to have this straight section all the way back. So when I did that, I wound up cutting the kind of crusty roof first, cut it as up to that point, that breaking point, and then once I got it cut, then I came back and laid it over the full uncut front section and just marked it exactly. And I know it looks a little wavy, but it's just because when I cut this is a little wavy. But I was like, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm going to glass it anyway. I'll make it match wavy to wavy so it matches up. Right now, this gap is there just because it's spread apart because my windshield is kind of tilted forward. And what I wound up doing was I put an aluminum, I don't know if you can see, there's an aluminum strap in there. When you look at the top, it's actually made up of foam in the core right here. And then there's two thin layers of fiberglass. It makes me understand why you roll one of these and these things are crushed, and it's also why these things need roll cages. And my other one has a roll cage or roll bar in it, but they need a full roll cage. I would not trust these tops in a rollover at all. So basically I dug out the foam core, and this strap is probably that wide. And so basically when that foam is dug out, then I can insert the aluminum strap in there and sandwich this together just for reinforcement, screw it together. It'll also help with my curvature. You can see I got a little bit of a dip. That's just because this piece starts to taper off because I barely had enough. I can see why if people are making a Troopy and they're actually making it full length, you almost need 3 tops to do it. But I think I can. This one's pretty bad. It's going to need some fiberglass work anyway. And I'm like, because somebody put a roof rack on it that's screwed right through. So there's holes I got to fix anyway. And I thought, it shouldn't be a big deal if I reinforce it. And I should be able to glass that in. Now, the only thing is I now need to make rain gutter, right, that goes all the way across here and matches up in there. So that's going to have to all be fabricated because the rain gutter that was on his was just toast. I mean, it was just awful. So same type of deal. We're going to have rain gutter, up in here to construct. You can buy them, but they're kind of, I don't know. I feel like I should be able to make that part. It's a pretty easy profile to bend up, and I just need some sections of that. So that really will be my next step, is to make that, and then I'll weld in. It's got threaded inserts that go up underneath. You can kind of see one right in there, and so I'll have to weld all those in. I've got those already from my other resto, so we should be good to be able to fabricate those. So so that's kind of where we're at. So now it actually looks like something because it's got a top on it. We got some rear windows fabricated. I came back, did some cleanup. These all had paint on them, these ambulance doors. I kind of wanted to see what I was getting into there before I cut those other doors up. So kind of see what I've got to do there. Gaps aren't really established. I put some sheet in there just to kind of start to do that. I'll have to come in. I've got these maybe a little tight on there. They're not fully welded in yet either. So it's at the back. So we'll do some work there. He had cut the hinges when trying to get the top off, so I had to come in, do some welding there, and make up some hinges. But yeah, going pretty well, honestly. I know it looks like a mess, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. This is probably about the point where I started working on my other restoration in terms of what I had to work with. So we got a pretty good shell to start with. So the next thing, really, like I said, is there are those rain gutters, and then I'm gonna start sectioning doors once I get my hinges installed and get that pillar all kind of fabricated. So those are going to be big jobs to do, but I think it should go pretty well. I'm cruising pretty fast, honestly. I don't know what it is about this, but I was talking to Eric the other day. I was like, getting back into like doing sheet metal stuff has been really good, actually. I can kind of come down here and I don't have to think a whole lot. It's not like working on, making a pizza cutter or making a piece of artwork or something. I can just kind of come down here and I don't know, for some reason it feels like there are problems to solve, but it feels a little bit mindless, and I can just like get stuff done. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep plugging forward, and yeah, it's too bad it's taken this long to kind of update, but I was kind of at a standstill there for a little bit until I found that top. And oh yeah, that's the other thing. I'm looking into an engine right now, so I've got a lead on an engine. I think I might try to see if I could get a hold of that soon. Engine and transmission, and we're gonna go Toyota, but we're not gonna go stock. I'll just say that. So hopefully I can get this. I won't say too much about it until I actually get it. But I'm really excited to see how this potential lead works out. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that kind of overview of what's been going on and what I've been doing. And thanks for watching. Make sure check out future videos if you can. And appreciate you guys following along on the journey on this. It should be pretty fun. So yeah, stay tuned. Okay, cool. See ya.